Welcome to the Movie Podium. We're starting a new segment where we bring friends on from the podcast to help us review a movie. I'm your host, Matt Scott, and I'm here with Daniel.
Heyo!
And this week, we brought on a fellow podcaster who we met on Instagram, Sawyer from the Film Haven Reviews, to dissect the comic book classic Batman from 1989.
Wait till they get a load of me.
There it is.
All right. So, Sawyer, Daniel and I both listened to your podcasts on The Shadow and Dick Tracy.
Yeah.
Which, for anyone watching or listening, go take a listen. He's got some good stuff.
Oh, thanks.
I want to bounce a question to you, though.
Yeah.
What stands out between this and those two movies?
The Shadow is a very obvious influence on Batman as a character because he came out about 9 years before as a radio program.
Yep.
And so because they have such similarities about being in a New York style, like I think it's New York for The Shadow, but Gotham is obviously, and depending on the iteration, is very just New York. It's just Manhattan. Yep. That kind of style. He's also a rich boy, and he has this. He's kind of close to the cops, but the cops also have this antagonist relationship to him. Like there's a lot of like little through lines, and of course, since Batman was later, it's you can definitely say that Batman was influenced by The Shadow. Mm-hmm. But funny enough, the movies. The Shadow came out in 94, and so you can tell in that movie just how much the movie we're talking about tonight, the 1989 Batman, was an influence on that, which is just, it's kind of a weird vibe there. But I think one of the main things, which is definitely one of my favorite aspects of all these movies, is the backdrops and the setting and that kind of stuff is really the biggest part, I think. The noir feel, once again, I mean, it's both of those movies have a noir. I mean, the whole vibe of that theme I was doing was trench coat, fedora wearing guys. It was kind of a noir nostalgia in the 90s. And since this movie came out in 89, it kind of started that noir nostalgia. At least that was my theory. I don't know if that's actually true, but it's kind of hard to refute when you look at the evidence. All those movies in that time period, and Dick Tracy as well. Dick Tracy very much, obviously, in the noir sense, just because of where it came from as well, around the same time. Comic strips being at a time when noir was actively in cinema, as well as when everyone was wearing trench coats and fedoras, and there were detectives out there acting like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about Dick Tracy is there's a lot of big-name actors or actresses in that,
my God,
right?
huge.
So, like
Al Pacino.
Yeah, so you're getting close
Warren
to that.
Beatty.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true, actually, because Batman has especially the three big ones, and then, of course, Billy D. Williams as well. But,
yeah.
Kim Basinger and Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson.
All right, ready for some random-ass facts?
Let's do it.
First of all, it got a 7.5 on IMDb.
Is that higher than Thor?
4.5.
Thor 0.5.
Thor 0.5? Damn, no.
So this movie was in the process of being made for about a decade. Superman came out in 1978, which was an obvious success. Tom Mankiewicz was a co-writer, and he kind of came up with both scripts. Well, in that original Batman script, they had Batman and Robin origin stories, which is pretty crazy.
That's wild.
And they also had included the Joker and the Penguin as the villains. You also had Rupert Thorne and Barbara Gordon all in this movie, or originally going to be in this movie when it first had a script. It even had a budget and was supposed to be released in 1985, but never got made.
Wow.
Could you imagine all
characters.
Those? I know.
I mean, obviously Penguins and Batman Returns, but it's like they had to split some of that up, and of course a lot of those characters didn't make it, but that is too bloated. We've seen other movies, I'm thinking like the 2016 Suicide Squad, where they've tried to stuff in too many origin stories and too many people, too many elements all at once, and then you get lost in the sauce, and you can't make a clear direction.
Yeah, I agree. Having origin stories of Batman and Robin, I like how I like the idea of having one, obviously Batman, and then you learn about Robin later. I
Right,
like how they
right.
did that because, yeah, I agree. Trying to figure out origin stories for 4 characters that are really important
Right.
might be a lot for one movie.
Yeah, I read that Burton was like in full contempt of having Robin in the script. He
Yeah.
did not want it in there. They even wrote in a version where Robin was in it just so they could appease the producers, but they were never going to do it.
Wow, I didn't see that. That's
Yeah.
funny.
So it definitely needed to be as bare bones. And also, like you're saying, the origin story stuff. One of the things that makes this movie so unique is, especially at the time, was that it isn't an origin movie. He's already Batman.
Yeah, right. And I actually like that.
Yeah, I love it. You
Yeah.
don't need all that.
Yeah, agreed.
That's one of my favorite things about the Batman.
Yes,
It's
same.
the fact
Yeah,
that
we've
it's-
talked about
it's
that.
just
I was
2
thinking the
years
same
in,
thing.
And he's Batman. The bat signal's already there.
Yep.
He's friends with Gordon. You know, all that stuff is taken care of. It's just like,
Yep.
you know it.
We already
Here's
know
the
it.
Story.
100%.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
So this story of getting made keeps getting wilder. They had David Cronenberg, who directed The Fly.
What?
And Joe Dante, who directed Gremlins, right? Those were both approached to direct this first before Tim Burton. They actually didn't even let Tim Burton make this movie until Beetlejuice had a lot of success.
The
So it
success,
wasn't
right, that
greenlit
makes
until
sense.
that.
Go ahead. Make my millennium.
Yeah.
Which is funny. Again, there's so many ties between our Beetlejuice story and this movie, and that's a big one, right?
For sure. I didn't realize how young Tim Burton was at this time.
Oh, very young. I mean, I think he was
In
like,
his 20s.
yeah, right out of film school at this
Yeah,
point. I mean,
right.
his first few movies just took off. He had
Yeah.
such a good run during that era.
Oh, man. I mean, that's one of the most formative directors for me growing up, 100%. All those
Yeah.
movies.
Another tie to that, obviously, Michael Keaton.
Mm-hmm.
When fans first heard that Michael Keaton was going to be Batman, there was extreme outrage.
heard
I
about
read that there were 50,000 protest letters
Oh, my
sent to
God.
Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
That's
it's an
crazy.
it's an early version of that. What we see all the time now, fan casting and people getting so upset about their beloved character not being cast well or cast in a way that they think is appropriate. And the fans, of course, know better.
Yeah, than Tim Burton.
Right. It was a weird pick, though. From everything that I read,
100%.
All the producers, everybody was like, "Huh?" And when you look at
Yep.
some of the other actors that they were putting in, which is all the big names of the time.
Yep.
Like Harrison Ford, Tom Selleck, and Mel Gibson, all those people. It's like,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, those guys could have done it. I mean, especially like Mel Gibson, I think could have done it. I mean, but
Yeah, he
it's-
was a big front runner.
right. But we'll talk about it, I guess, later when we get into the movie. But Michael Keaton's performance is pretty key to the uniqueness of this Batman.
Agreed. 100% agree.
Yeah. I think Keaton nails the Burton Batman.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
But it is different. It's not very Bruce from the comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So since we took out the score scene,
Yeah.
and for those who are listening, we took out some of the questions, some of the fluffs, and get to the nitty gritty on this one. I knew there'd be a lot of conversation, so some of those
Right.
are kind of unnecessary, especially when the music is. I mean, the score scene is the entire movie.
Everybody knows that because it's Danny Elfman. He wins.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or Prince, but Danny Elfman.
Yeah, definitely. So John Williams was actually a serious contender for composer. Warner Brothers pushed for it. Tim Burton said that he had been collaborating with a guy named Danny Elfman. Once the producers heard the score, the intro to Batman, they're like, all right, we're sold. They heard the boisterous opening number with the horns and everything, and they're like,
yes.
we're sold.
God, could you
Well, that
imagine
would
what
have been really different, I think.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Like, whoa. Like, I mean, obviously John Williams, he's like kind of the GOAT, but it's like, I could not. Does he do a lot of dark stuff? I'm just trying to think. Like, most of his stuff
Not
is
really.
pretty, like, really, it's really good, but, you know, Indiana Jones and stuff,
It's
Jaws,
not
I guess, is
that
dark,
dark.
but
But like
Yeah.
not to this extent.
this
And
gives
I
a
think-
vibe.
Yeah, Elfman has a certain little fantasy or something.
Yes,
That's
whimsy,
just sprinkled. Yeah, whimsy. That's exactly the word.
dark whimsy.
Yes, that I don't think Williams has.
Agreed.
This would have been a bombastic, and it probably still would have been awesome.
Yeah, he could
but
make it work.
it just wouldn't have been the same movie with Williams.
Completely agree. Also, on that same note, George Michael and Michael Jackson were both asked to be a contributor to the soundtrack in front of Prince. Both turned it down. Michael Jackson said he had tour obligations, and so they gave it to Prince, which I know Daniel's a big fan of this Prince stuff.
Oh my god, I'm sensing some sarcasm there.
Oh, definitely so.
No, it is weird. I agree.
I'm not a big fan of Prince in general,
Right.
but I think his work on this movie is just subpar.
I was just
It's
thinking
random.
it again in that climactic scene where he's on the parade and it's about who do you trust. That's the song, and it just the energy was not there for
Agreed.
what everything else. The pageantry that's going on is very bombastic, like we're talking about, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of fanfare and stuff like that. And then it's just like this. It doesn't have a lot of energy to it, and I'm like, where is
Agreed.
it? I do like the very end when Joker hits the beats for the last bit of the song. That's kind of fun. But if he would have had that same kind of energy throughout the whole thing, I think it would have been better. But I thought Prince was it's a weird pick.
It's a very weird pick. I agree. And it makes sense that they wanted Michael Jackson because he was on top of the world at the point.
Yeah, that
Also-
totally checks out.
Yep.
That Dance is just about the worst song I've ever heard.
It's not great. And crazy enough, it sold 3 million copies, the soundtrack.
It's so long, too.
Yeah.
Well, apparently I think at the time this was like the top grossing movie that
It
ever
was.
like existed. So
yeah.
that does
Until Batman Returns.
Wow. So
Yeah.
that does make sense. That
Yep.
even if it's bad, people are like, this movie's popular. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy the song.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little more about that. All right, last one that I had was that Billy D. Williams was signed on to do multiple Batmans as Harvey Dent /
That totally makes
Two-Face.
sense.
But those words will count, and so will my actions.
And once they got to Batman Forever, the studio wanted a bigger actor, and so they got Tommy Lee Jones, who was really big at the time.
Surely one of you knows who Batman is.
I was wondering about
bummer.
that. Because really, I mean, truly, the only things between all four movies is what Commissioner Gordon and Albert.
And
those are the only two
Alfred,
characters.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those are Albert, Alfred. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess. We know.
But yeah, I really was thinking about that when I was watching this the other day. I was like, he's Harvey Dent running for mayor. Interesting. I didn't clock that when I was a kid, and so I'm just like, but where does this go? And it doesn't go anywhere. I
This
guess.
goes nowhere. All right, let's get into the questions. Unless
Sure.
you guys have any other facts.
Well, I do have a couple little things.
Yeah, let's go for it.
One thing that's really interesting is that Burton. So I read this really great article from the Den of Geek, and it really broke down everything, all the whole story. Some of that stuff though was not in there that you told me, which is great. But for example, some of those influences, and we can get into a little bit of it later. But so if you guys know the movie, The Man Who Laughs.
Yeah.
It's like
Yes.
it's an old silent
Yes,
film.
I did see this. Yes.
I'm
right.
familiar with it simply because it's the inspiration for the Joker.
Exactly.
So that's the inspiration for Joker from the guy who made Joker. What's his name? Bill Finger. But Tim Burton, I don't think even knew that at the time because he wasn't a big comic book guy, and he inadvertently used the man
Wow.
who laughs as an inspiration for the permanent smile. Specifically because in this Joker he's got like Heath Ledger, he's got like a kind of scars and stuff, but in this one it's
the
like
Glasgow
cosmetically cosmetically the nerve endings he cannot not
I
smile.
kind of like that better.
Jack is dead, my friend. You can call me Joker.
I love that.
honest.
I love that. Of course, you got the where do you think I got these scars? That's a good part of
Yes,
that. But
I like that too. Yeah.
yeah, they made it work. But
Yep.
I thought that was really interesting. There's a lot of that from what I read where because Tim Burton did not read the comics that much, he kind of was taking it back to the origins without knowing he was.
That's crazy.
Because Tim Burton just has a dark style and he wanted
Wow,
to do this
that's
epic
crazy.
gothic thing.
Yeah.
And it ended up being closer to that early or late 1930s Batman because it had gotten so fluffy with the all the comic books in between where they're Batman and Robin and they're getting all kind of pulpy, not pulpy, but what's the movie with Adam West, like that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
bang and woo and
Campy.
yes, the campy. Thank you.
Very campy in this movie, and
So
I had talked about that a little bit, and I agree. Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
There's another thing too. Tim Curry and Robin Williams were both slated to be.
I saw that.
And it was because Jack Nicholson was back and forth. He was oscillating. He wasn't sure if he was going to do it or not.
Yep.
And then when he heard Tim Curry got offered the job, like a pay or play, he was like, "All right, I'll do it." And he got back into rights. Back in. So that's like, man, he made some money off.
Yeah,
of this
I think it
movie.
was like 60 million at the time, which with inflation, it's like 100 or 150 or something
That
insane.
is insane.
Smart man.
Insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really just a couple of those little things I just thought was so interesting because it's just the same with some of the other things you were saying. Just the John Williams, trying to think like what would this other movie have been if you didn't have all these elements.
Yeah,
that's just life for
definitely.
you, I guess. Synchronicity is how everything has to work out in this way, or you wouldn't get this like super iconic movie. A lot
Agreed.
of risks being taken in this movie.
Definitely.
And that's what made it good.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, we talk about in Beetlejuice too. Like, I can't imagine a world without Michael Keaton being Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy. Daniel?
Just to tie a bow on that Nicholson thing, he got merchandising points.
Oh, that's nice.
Like, he got points off of every toy that was sold. That dude knew how to negotiate.
And
also,
you know how
Warner
much
Brothers wanted him really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that they did the bait and switch there where they were like, hey, Nicholson, we're trying to get Robin Williams or we're trying to get Tim Curry, which those guys would have been good too. But yeah,
Tim Curry would have been good.
I like Tim Curry. I absolutely could see it.
Robin Williams is like too much of a clown.
These roles dangled in front of him. Like, hey, buddy, you want this?
Yeah.
You want this? And then they bring in the big name that
The
they
actual.
wanted.
They did that with him, I think, with Two-Face in Batman Forever, I think.
Wow. Not
I think
again.
he was, I think that Tommy Lee Jones took it from him. I think you're right, Daniel. That's happened to Robin Williams a few times in this world, the comic book world.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well,
All right.
he had a good career.
Yeah,
he
yeah,
did.
exactly. All right, let's get some questions. You ready?
Let's
Yes,
do
sir.
it.
All right. First question. Favorite thing about the movie? Funny thing is we put up a picture. It says favorite thing about the movie. So you don't even get to see the head bobs.
I feel so honored to finally be in the room when that's going on. It's
That's awesome. All right.
So who's going first?
Yeah, let's go with Daniel first.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about this movie is actually something that I feel is one of the most important things to Batman in general, and that's Bruce and Alfred's relationship. Because when done wrong, it just is completely jarring, because this is a man who watched over Bruce from the moment his parents were killed and has raised him up and helps him on his crusade, and it's just so difficult to have a good Batman movie, comic book, whatever, if you don't have that Bruce and Alfred relationship correct.
Well, I think I've embarrassed him for long enough. I'm off to bed.
I really like when he's like, "Oh, that Vicky Vale's really a good girl or something," and he's like, "Why don't you marry her?"
I feel that there's a certain weight that lifts when she is here.
Alfred, why don't you marry her?
I like.
There's
that
a lot of subtlety in that relationship, but I think that's kind of what you're getting at, where it's done well, where it kind of builds up over the course of the movie. He kind of like is subtle hints are turning into bigger nudges, and then turning into him just doing things for Bruce to kind of nudge him along. And then at the end, wasn't there like a scene where he basically said like, "I didn't like raise you just to see you go die in a bat, suit."
Yeah, and like it's not over the top, right?
No, it's
That's the
him
cool
being
part.
that Alfred. I just grew up with him, so that's the one I know. the most, because those are all 4 of those movies as a kid I watched. I didn't even know they were bad, the second 2 or the last one especially.
Sure.
I didn't know the last one was bad until I got older because I was just at the right age. It was literally made for me. So
Right.
I didn't think that the ice skating and stuff was that weird. I just thought it was kind of cool.
Which is funny because Eric, I think Eric still thinks they're really good.
Oh my god! I mean, I'll watch them. I still think like they're schlocky, but at the same time, they're
fine.
I still love the design of like Gotham and stuff. We'll
Sure.
get to the Gotham design later, but yeah, I agree. I think that I really love this Alfred. He might be my favorite, even though obviously there's been some really good ones later. But that subtlety, like Daniel was talking about with this relationship, was just done really well.
Yep, absolutely. Sir, what was your favorite thing?
So I mean, I think it's a little bit obvious, but to me it is at least. But it's the design, the set and production design of the movie is just. I didn't realize how much I loved it until the Christopher Nolan movies came out, because that's all I knew was just these movies. And so whenever we had a new Batman IP kind of coming out, I got to see, and I really enjoyed Batman Begins and Dark Knight when they came out. Dark Knight Rises, I don't know. But the first 2 especially I really liked. And then going back and looking at them again after watching the old ones again, I kind of was like, oh, there was something missing from this for me. And that was the setting. The fact that I liked the Batman Begins is a little better because it's got Wayne Tower and it's got the monorail. It feels a little bit more like a comic book fantasy kind of city. Gotham is a big part of that movie. Whereas Dark Knight is just a terrorist movie with the Joker and a guy in a cape. Like
In Chicago.
In Chicago,
and it's obvious Chicago.
It's blatantly Chicago.
It is,
and I'm like, that's annoying to me. And then Dark Knight Rises is we just switched it to blatantly New York City.
Yeah,
and I'm like
Pittsburgh too for the football scene.
Oh, right. So that's my point. Is like for Christopher Nolan, who's someone who's so detail oriented and so this and that, he's like a master of his craft. To just like try to pull that over on us, I was just like, come on, brother. Which that's part of his genius in a way, actually, is that he can pull that stuff over on you. He can do something so blatant as to put Chicago and then New York and Pittsburgh in 3 different movies and call it Gotham, and people still think it's some of the best movies of all time. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But in this movie, I mean, the backdrops are incredible. I miss backdrops. And when you see the way that this like amalgamation of spires and it's like steampunk, but it's also Art Deco, but it's also Gothic. It's like all 3 of those things put together, and it's epic on top of that. It's the massive scale on top of everything else, and it honestly just like is one of the biggest influences for this type of style that I like in movies, video games, any kind of art. Anytime I see that epic Gothic style, I'm like, this is giving me everything, and it's because of this movie and the next one, Batman Returns. Both of those movies were just so influential to me, and I kind of looked up some of the one of the writers, Sam Hamm. He was talking about their creating of Gotham, and he said it was in the script. It's actually written this way at the beginning of the script to describe Gotham. It's as if hell erupted through the sidewalks and kept on growing. And I'm like,
that's
whoa.
awesome.
But it is supposed to be, I mean, obviously, like, Manhattan didn't get cleaned up until, like, post-Ghostbusters. I mean, one of the things that Ghostbusters did was kind of rebrand New York and Manhattan in particular into something that could be, where movies could be made here and people could come back. And
100%.
Because in the 70s and stuff, it was just like, I mean, Rubble Kings, it's like, this
scary.
It's a scary place.
Yep.
And so this still on the cusp of Manhattan being really gritty and grimy. And they kind of used that dark space and just blew it up to 11. And that's my favorite thing about this movie, 100%. And even in some of the interior shots, I didn't even realize because it's been so long since I've seen this one. But like in the museum scene, it's a whole set and you got those steampunk, like the pipes and everything coming out in a museum. And it's just like, yeah, this works. I love this. It really puts you in a space. Gotham is my favorite character in the Batman, like truly. And so when you get Gotham wrong, it really irks me. And that's why in the newer ones too, like the Snyder movies, I couldn't even tell in Batman vs. Superman when you were in Gotham and when you were in Metropolis. And they just go back and forth.
Completely agree.
And I was just like, I'm so disoriented and I hate that.
Daniel, what were you gonna? Yeah, what do you got, Daniel?
Yeah, I totally agree with you about Gotham. Gotham is a very distinct city. It's supposed to feel gothic and foreboding, and you look up and you see grotesque staring down at you, and they get it right in this. And I think Nolan just has that thing where he wanted this to be Batman in the real world.
Yes,
so
it was realism,
he made
for sure.
Gotham in the real world, you know.
Yep, good point.
It's built up. It doesn't have the same, you know, gothic influences or anything like that.
Right.
But this series very much feels like the comic books.
Yes.
And you look at, you know, the Snyderverse, and I couldn't tell Metropolis apart either. And it's supposed to have its own, you know, feeling and architecture, which is very modern, very of the city of the future sort of.
It's like
ideal.
a bright Art Deco kind of futurism. Yeah.
And so those movies didn't nail it. I'd have to watch the Batman again and pay more attention
It's better.
to Gotham, but I think it at least has that dark, brooding feeling of Gotham.
It is understated. It's kind of a mix between Nolan and Burton, where you've got very practical, newer looking buildings. It looks modern, but at the same time, there are still parts of it that have those big stone structures, and it looks a little more epic. It has a more epic feel. It definitely feels outside of reality just enough.
Yeah,
because they are going for a realistic Batman, especially in the sense of his emotions.
The detective stuff too.
The detective stuff as well.
Yeah.
It's very bare bones Batman, which I loved that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we're all on board to that.
Yeah, he's the greatest detective in the world, and
exactly.
he doesn't really use it that much in some of the other movies as much as he does in this one. And I think in Batman he does okay in this one because he is investigating a bit.
Yeah,
he's kind of looking at stuff and he's figuring it out. There's some of the best just shots are just him in the Batcave just staring at a screen.
Yeah,
you just really see that he's like mulling everything over.
I like when he gives Vicky Vale all the tips to put in the press too.
Take that to the press.
Yes.
It's not, again, nothing about this movie is like too in your face other than the campiness.
Right.
Other than that, it's very subtle. Everything's done really soft, and it's awesome when that happens.
Yeah, I had a note about that about Keaton's performance. It's very it's
100%.
super dialed down. He almost at times he literally is like spaced out. There's like scenes where he just is like just looking off into the distance, doesn't really know he doesn't seem fully there.
Yeah, it's great.
I love it.
Yeah.
What was your favorite thing?
Yeah, so my favorite thing is kind of what Daniel mentioned already, but I like how it's one of the most important and best comic book movies of all time, and it really feels like a comic book movie, as we talked about. The campiness, the silliness is there.
Right.
The scene where he electrocutes the guy, and again, a shrunken head in 2 movies in a row that we've watched.
What?
Because it's Beetlejuice. And Tim
pretty
Burton,
brutal
of course.
too. It's pretty brutal.
It is brutal,
like a burnt man.
And they stare. That shot is like 10 seconds long too. It's very campy, which is it gives it that comic book feel like you were talking about. But I really appreciate how influential this movie was and how important it is to the whole comic book world in terms of movies, because we talk about this in our Superman podcast, and this is kind of what we were saying earlier. It was very influential in a sense because it put comic book movies as a blockbuster, right?
Yes.
But really, the only movies after that were Superman movies, and then you had like Howard the Duck. You had a pretty bad Punisher movie. You had attempts at repeating that success with little success.
Right.
And so then Batman kind of learned how to commercialize that intellectual property, that IP you're talking about.
Yes.
And they knew how to capitalize on that. I mean, the buzz around that was insane. And as we talked about, it was just a box office smash. And so I guess one of my favorite things is I appreciate it because it just feels like a comic movie in every sense for that. Daniel?
100%.
Well, to your point, Warner Brothers owned all of DC's film rights because Warner Brothers owns DC. Sure. So they were very careful to make the right Batman movie. They made their Superman movie, and they were very careful about making their right Batman movie. I wish they would have shown more care when they gave Snyder the reins to the DC universe, and he said, "Let's just put gray over everything, and no one's a good person, and everything sucks."
Right. Very dark and glum. But like that's what's so weird about this movie, and it's kind of what you're talking about too, Matt, about how it is dark. It is a markedly dark turn for a comic book movie in cinema, in like major mainstream cinema. I mean, for a movie this dark to be the highest grossing film up to that point is pretty wild. But also, only Tim Burton could do that because he has a dark whimsy, like we were talking about that Danny Elfman has.
Yeah,
he has that ability to create a whimsicalness with his darkness. I mean, you look at Nightmare Before Christmas or Corpse Bride or any of those, Edward Scissorhands, all those. And
they're all successful.
It feels like a fairy tale, but it also feels really dark. And it kind of softens each one. Like it makes the fairiness, the whimsy, a little more serious, so you can kind of not be like, this is dumb. And it makes the darkness a little lighter, so that you can kind of take it. Even as a kid, I watched this when I was probably way too young, but I didn't really get the horror
definitely not
aspect of it because it was fun. It was like it's kind of has a little bit of a
it's
like
silly
a kiddiness to it. Yeah, silliness, campiness, like you're saying.
It's like a yin and a yang. Really he's got a yin and a yang in him, and it works perfectly when he does something like this, where he can express both sides and create this beautiful movie.
And that's what comic books are, right? Like it's a way to escape, and there's so many different ways they blend that together with that escapism, with silly parts. I mean, there's the wham, the pow, all the onomatopoeias, but you also have the dark aspects of any of these comics, especially Batman. So to be able to put that together on screen, it's awesome. Daniel?
What's interesting about this is that in the 80s, like, Batman had gone towards, the pendulum had swung towards the wacky 1960s Batman, and in the 80s the pendulum sort of swung back and was starting the darkness. The Dark Knight Returns had released during this period, so you're swinging back into that dark Batman. But I think it's still on the darker side, but it hasn't gone the full grim dark.
Agreed.
And depressing and overwhelming despair.
Yeah, and I like that.
Yeah.
Like I like that this I mean, again, it acknowledges that his parents died and this and that, but it's not really focused on that. It's more about the Joker than it is Batman.
Oh, I was thinking about that too. He actually has, it seems, I don't know what the times are, but he seems like he has more screen time.
Look it up.
I was thinking about it though. Bruce Wayne doesn't even come in until the first 17 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's
pretty wild.
And again,
it's a 2-hour movie, but
yeah, again, this is a huge blockbuster.
Right.
So yeah, I just wanted to say, like, all of those talking points. Also, that I like the score from Elfman, the gadgets, the vehicles, and Kim Basinger. And with that, I have a top 5. Top 5 Bruce Wayne's girlfriends.
I knew.
Okay.
This is great.
All right.
All right. So my number 5, Poison Ivy, played by Uma Thurman.
And you are
Poison Ivy.
And Batman and Robin. Number 4, Dr. Chase Meridian, played by Nicole Kidman in Batman Forever.
Well, I wish I could say that my interest in you was purely professional.
Number 3, Selena Kyle, Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns.
I am Catwoman. Hear me roar.
Number 2, Vicky Vale, Kim Basinger in Batman.
I just gotta know, are we gonna try to love each other?
And my number 1, Daniel, is Selena Kyle, Anne Hathaway in Dark Knight Rises.
No way.
You're all gonna wonder how you ever thought you could live so large and leave so little for the rest of us.
No way.
All right.
Oh boy.
And again, it's funny
because
because
you threw me off the set with that early Selena Kyle, and I was.
I know.
We got some explaining to do.
And it's funny, Sawyer, that you talk about, because I'm not a huge Dark Knight Rises fan either.
Yeah.
But Daniel and I have talked about the way that Anne Hathaway and Selena Kyle's character is portrayed in this, and the the give and take and the way that she
Yes.
like wants him to stop and wants to just go away and be with him, like
Right.
it feels real more than a
Yeah.
lot of these other just
Yeah.
girls.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to rewatch that. It's been a long time. The last few times I watched the movie, I just was so distracted by the plot holes and just so many things
Sure.
about that movie that I'm like, what is going on? But I didn't really zone in on that, so I'll definitely check that out next time.
I just
Don't
think
get me
that
started
those
about Bane.
yeah, we
Bane
don't
was
appreciate
that's a
Bane.
misstep.
Yeah, 100%. All
Sign a
right, well,
petition for that one.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
You know, it's funny you talked about gadgets,
Yeah.
which brought me to my top 5.
Oh, we don't have music there. That's awesome.
So my top 5 was top 5 Batman gadgets. So I got an outside looking in, which is the cape glider. It's a good one. I mean, it's almost in there. I would if it's not always in all of them and all that kind of stuff. Number 5, smoke pellet. So we got the smoke bomb. He's got to
Very
use it to
important.
get out of trouble, all that kind of stuff. And he does use it in this movie, which I was happy. I had this down before the movie started. Number 4, blade wristbands. The bladed wristbands. Those are a tool. And Batman Begins does a great job of utilizing those. I really like the way that they put him into the League of Assassins, like a League of Assassin thing. Number 3, line launcher. So that's where it's not quite the zip line, but it's one where he can go and it goes perpendicular, and then he can take it and run down. He does it in the museum scene.
Yeah.
I was like, is he going
Yeah.
to have it in this movie? And he did, so I was very happy. And then 2, the classic grapple gun.
Yep.
He uses it in every one of them. And I loved in the Batman where he uses it and he like shoots it through a guy's leg and then pulls him with it. That was great. And then number 1, the Batarang. Come on.
Yeah, gotta
classic.
be.
Batarang's great. My
Nice.
biggest gripe about the Batman is the Batarang, because it's so cool that it's in his emblem. Like his emblem is the Batarang, and then he uses it 2 times. Once to cut crime scene tape to get into the room, and then once to cut that electrical wire before he falls into the pit in Madison Square Garden. And it's like, you didn't even have to do that. Like, I don't even know why you
just
did
wanted
that.
to use it. Yeah.
Yes, so I'm very bummed about the Batarang in that movie, but that's my only issue really with the movie. So
This is where the grappling gun was invented.
no
In
way.
the comics,
Really?
he was still using a batarang and a rope.
Whoa.
And-
Okay.
And the grapple gun gets some good screen time in this movie too, where he pulls the guy, he like grapples him and then pulls him, which I love. And then there's
that
the
was
one
awesome.
with the big getaway with Vicky Vale.
I
where
love how
like,
he
goes
asks
up.
her to wait.
How much do you weigh?
About 108, I think.
Oh my god, that was so good. Wait, you're not
That was
108 pounds.
Yeah, this-
You weigh a little more than 108.
Oh, really?
They don't
I
get
love
away
that.
with that nowadays. All right, next category. Least favorite part about the movie. All right, Sawyer, what was your least favorite thing?
Batman killing people.
Ah,
That's right, Daniel.
Is that Daniel's too?
That's right, Daniel. Batman killing
Bet
people.
it
I did
is.
not know. You know, I never even thought about it. Like, I think about Batman killing people as like that's this big thing. He doesn't kill people.
Yep.
But I don't know how much in Batman Returns he does. Like, I know that you were saying he does, and I had to rewatch it with those goggles because maybe he
Yeah.
does. Because
Yeah.
it is
He
subtle in
Drops-
this movie
he drops
too.
a bomb down a manhole. That
Yeah,
he
that's right.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
with the
And-
intention of obviously something.
and
And
then
that's
he
the similar
smiles.
thing in this one. Yeah. Oh, see, that's bad. And in this one too, this one too is similar. It's
Yeah.
when he does the raid on the Axis chemicals.
Yeah.
He literally just blows the whole place up, and there's people all over him. And I'm like,
Yeah, you can clearly see there are like 20
Dying.
dudes in that room.
Yeah,
he also
didn't
has
care
like
at all.
30 caliber Brownings on the front, on the top of the of the Batmobile, shooting into there, and I'm just like, whoa, he's going full war mode, shooting at Joker too later as well from the
Yep.
the Batwing going down there, and I'm just like, oh no, and which is weird because it seems like earlier in the movie he really was avoiding killing.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting, the first thing you hear about Batman is, I heard that he dropped somebody X amount of floors.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first thought, was like, whoa, he kills somebody.
Right.
And then when he actually gets those guys, he does make a point not to do something like that, right?
Yes.
And so I was like, oh, maybe not. But then that explosion scene happened. I'm like, whoa, you're totally right. Like, wait, this is weird.
I mean,
he doesn't care.
Right. You could probably maybe try to headcanon it as he's starting to get really unhinged. But
Sure.
even still, it's just not Batman. That's just not what he does.
Yeah.
So, least favorite part.
Yeah. Daniel?
And it's funny, just to tack on to that, the original Batman did kill.
Oh, really?
He had a gun and was just
In
like
the
a
comics?
vigilante like the Shadow or the Phantom, where he
Right.
would just off dudes. He killed the
Interesting.
Joker in his first 2 appearances.
Oh, my God.
The Joker's first 2 appearances, but they kept bringing him back because he was so popular. But eventually they got to the point where they were like, we need to differentiate Batman from these other vigilante heroes.
Interesting.
So
That's
they
really
gave
interesting.
him the no kill code, the no gun code, which is very important to him.
Yeah, I mean, that ends up making his. That's one of his defining things, and it's
100%.
interesting that you say that because now it's historically his defining thing. Because not just like as a character, but also in a meta way, they were trying to make him different, and that's why
Right.
they did that. So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Cool fact, Daniel. Daniel, what was your least favorite thing?
Oh yeah, what's your least favorite?
My least favorite, I had 3. Sawyer hit that first one for me. I
Nice.
just wrote down Bat Murderer. Number 2,
Daniel, what
is-
was your least favorite thing?
I don't like the Joker being involved directly with creating the Batman. I know the theme of the movie is they
Interesting.
created each other, and it's great for the movie. But for me, I don't like my Joker's backstory that fleshed out.
You ever dance with the devil by the pale moonlight?
I like
Yeah.
the Joker to be
I have a similar
Chaos
answer.
Demon. Chaos Demon.
I have a
yeah.
similar answer.
And then, no one knows what the fuck Bruce Wayne looks like. He's the Prince
Yeah.
of Gotham.
I know.
No one, everyone's like, who's Bruce Wayne? It's like, he's the Prince of Gotham. He's
Yeah.
He's lived in Gotham for
When
his
they-
whole life. He's a billionaire playboy. Like, no one knows who he... Like, there were still
That is
tabloids in
weird.
the 80s.
It's
Yeah.
almost like their weird way of creating an origin story, like quickly introducing you to him without having
Right.
like,
Introducing the people watching.
Right.
Yeah,
it's more of a plot
100%.
device than it is
Yep.
like
You're right.
logical. But
Yeah.
that I agree. That is really weird.
It just,
Yeah, I didn't
it
even
just
think
boggled
about
my
that, but
mind. I
you're
was
right.
like... Because, I hadn't seen it in so long, and she's like, do you know where Bruce Wayne is?
Yeah,
It's
she
like-
has no idea, and she's like a reporter, right?
Yeah,
Or like
right,
a
yeah.
photographer. Like clearly, she should be knowing. Like, yeah, somebody that rich and that famous.
Any
Well,
reporter would know
famous.
who that person was.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. Well, I have 2 things.
Okay.
Daniel kind of talked about one, and it's the backstory of the Joker. I don't need the fact that he killed his parents. I don't need that payoff that he dies or the Joker dies, and you close that loop. I don't think I like when the Joker has no origin story, or we don't need a backstory. He's just a villain, likes to see, as you said, Sawyer, the chaos. I mean, obviously in the comics, it's Joe Chill. It's not the Joker.
Yeah.
And so in this case, I think they were trying to make it dumber for people, and just to
Yes.
have that in mind, like, oh, this guy is so bad. They had to define his badness by saying that he killed his parents. I just don't think it's necessary for the Joker. Now, for a blockbuster, I see why, and that's probably it.
Yeah.
But for someone who just appreciates the villains, right, Daniel?
Yeah, just with the theme of the movie, it makes sense to do. But I actually like the fact that the Batman does create the Joker, but you don't know anything about the Joker, because in
Agreed.
the comics he's the Red Hood, who was a maybe criminal, maybe figurehead, who shows up, puts on a red helmet, really, that looks hilarious, and runs around with a group of thugs who are working for the mafia, and then Batman tries to save him, but he falls into the acid. You never know what his real origin is, besides the fact that
all I
he's
need.
in the Red Hood. I love that because it makes the whole dynamic of like, I need you, you complete me, to be
Yep.
more solid. But other than that, I totally agree. You don't need to know. I don't need to know he, did this when he was 20.
My other least favorite thing is, so I really like Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne / Batman. However, I don't think he looks like Batman from a physical or athletic standpoint.
Not at all.
And I don't need Sylvester Stallone, which is funny because there's a famous quote or interview that Sylvester did, and he talks about muscles and how basically Batman ruined action movies of the 80s. Because he says that action movies changed radically when it became possible to Velcro your muscles on.
Ooh.
And, of course, this is a direct shot at Bruce Wayne or Michael Keaton.
The bat suit. Yeah,
the Batman, the bat suit. Exactly. And so I don't need Sylvester Stallone roids jacked, but give me Christian Bale.
Yeah.
His athletic prowess or his build was perfect for Batman. So if I could have... Swing. Yeah, exactly. So if I could have the Keaton spaciness with Bale's athleticism, that would give me what I was looking for. And I think Robert Pattinson's pretty close to that.
He's sinewy, but he also has an athleticism to him. He's
it's weird.
It works.
Yeah, it does.
The suit also helps with that because it's like armor plated.
I know.
Such a good suit.
It is.
And it's
a really good
suit. It's
suit.
also built very well to his dimension.
And
physique.
Keaton, was famous for saying it was the most uncomfortable thing I had worn. I felt so restricted, and you see it. You see how restricted it is.
He's literally he can't move his neck. It wasn't until the Nolan Batmans that they actually started to give him a little bit, but even then, I think it was pretty restrictive. It's just hard.
Yeah, definitely. So when I see that again, and I see how unathletic Keaton looks, I'm like, well, I think I could beat up Batman. I don't want to see Batman like that. He's supposed to be a pretty well, trained fighter.
Yeah, I think that from what I read in that article, it seemed like Burton actually really wanted to made a conscious decision to do that, which is really strange to me because he really would. But he really wanted to do something different. His vision of Batman and Bruce Wayne was just going to be different, and I think part of that is influenced by the fact that he wasn't big into comic books. But it's very interesting because we talk a lot in fan culture about how accurate a comic book movie needs to be to the comic books, and I've come to the conclusion that it's not so much about the accuracy of the storyline; it's more of if you can just get the vibe. So I do agree with you though. Keaton isn't very Batman.
No, not from that vibe.
Batman, no.
But Bruce Wayne, I think he does a great job. He nails it because he doesn't necessarily. Because I feel like Bruce Wayne doesn't want the limelight, just adopts the limelight. He is the limelight. Like Daniel said, everybody knows him. He's this billionaire, but he really wants to be quiet and spacey and not there. And I think Keaton does a great job of that presence.
Introvert. He's an introvert.
Yeah, exactly. Daniel,
the way I see it, a lot of people say that Bruce Wayne is the mask and Batman is his true persona.
The new
Just
movie
like
did
they
that.
say that Superman is the mask
That's
and
fair.
Clark Kent is his true persona. I think
That's fair.
Batman's true self is between the two. I think his true self is down in the Batcave, talking to Alfred, working on his computer. In the comics, when he's got his family around, when he's got Dick or Jason or all the other Robins,
Tim.
I feel like that's the true Bruce Wayne, the true guy underneath, where the public facade is a mask and Batman's a mask. But that when he's in the Batcave, hanging out with his loved ones, that's when he's really Bruce.
That's interesting.
That's a super solid take. I kind of agree with you, honestly.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Some of my favorite parts of, say, animated versions of Batman and stuff like that is when he's got the Bat family with him and they're all just kind of having their dynamics.
Couldn't agree more.
In the cave, and you get to see Bruce kind of being Bruce with the mask off, or with the public mask off, where he's just being himself, like you're saying. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I actually like the last season of the animated series a lot because of the other characters and how he kind of becomes not the dad, but kind of the dad.
He's
Like
having
when-
he's having dad issues with the family, and
I like
such
that dynamic a lot.
Yeah, he's so begrudging, and so he's really repressed, is what
Yep.
he is. And so when you have to fight, like having these animated characters, these kids, like
Yep.
having
I
like pushing your buttons, it's really interesting to see that stoic character be pushed to those places. That's
Yep,
what it's most
100%.
interesting.
Yeah, and that's what's so fun when Dick takes over the cowl for a little while.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
he's like this more lighthearted Batman, and he has Damian as his Robin, who's this serious, no
Right.
shit taking son of a bitch. And it's
a role
just
reversal.
fun to have the dynamic duo shifted.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. I really like. I haven't read a lot of I haven't read a lot of comics in general, but the comics that I have read are usually Batman comics. And one of my favorite is like Scott Snyder Batman, and the one about Black Mirror. It's a Dick Grayson when I got the cowl, and it's one of the best. So I agree with you. It's a really good. I like when they switch up the dynamics like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So next category: who won the movie? All right, let's go back to Daniel. Daniel, who won the movie?
Keaton, he was Batman, and
Yeah.
because of that, I'm going to do my top 5.
Oh, no way.
Do I have Daniel's? Oh, I do. I like yours better.
That's because I do more top 5s than you do, Matt.
Yeah, that's
So
fair.
I have to have a better theme. Mine are top 5 Batmans.
Oh, that's
Actors
good.
portraying
Wow.
Batmans.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
Cool.
Live
at
action.
number
So these are
5,
live
I
action?
have Affleck.
Okay.
He did an okay job. He was just in crappy movies. That's not his fault.
I gotta get it to chase me. Back to the city. Back to the kryptonite.
No.
Yeah.
That's
Number
fair.
4, I actually have Bale,
Where were the other drugs going?
Okay.
which I think Bale does a good job, but his Batman is not as interesting as some of the other Batmans that I'm going to get to.
Yeah, I agree.
Number 3, I have Adam West, because Adam West was
Nice.
such a good for what he was doing Batman. He was very chummy with the commissioner. He is, he was fatherly to Dick. He was friends with Alfred. Everything he did was exactly what he needed to do for that Batman.
But we must make Penguin think we're cooperating, at least until we get some hint as to where he's hidden the museum armor.
Yep.
Number 2,
that's
I'm
fair.
going with Robert Pattinson, because I really
Wow,
enjoyed
nice.
the Batman. I think he was the broody Bruce Wayne,
Yes.
the brooding Batman who hasn't quite become Batman yet, the symbol.
Yeah.
What was he afraid of? You?
And that was a really interesting take to get him to the point where he becomes a hero as opposed to just
Right.
the urban legend vigilante.
Yep.
And then number 1 is Michael Keaton. I think Michael
Boom.
Keaton does a great freaking job as Batman.
Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?
That's correct.
I would agree with that. That
I
that
think I
list
agree
is
with your top
solid.
5.
Yeah, solid list. I don't have any fighting on that one.
Watching the Batman, I said to myself, "This is the best Batman since Keaton."
Yeah,
This is really well
I
done.
agree.
I like a good emo Batman because he's emo. That's what he
Yeah.
is. That's. He's
We're all
very
about
brooding.
emo here at the
Yeah,
movie
big
podium.
sad boy energy.
We are.
Big sad boy energy.
Yeah, we're good with emo stuff
Yeah.
for sure.
And that's what he was missing in some of the other, especially the Batfleck. Like you said, I think that give it a different script.
Yeah,
I really
he might
think
have been okay, but
he would have done well. But one of my biggest problems with the Bruce Wayne from the Snyder movies is it's Bruce Wayne. It's the fact that he's just reduced to making quips about how rich he is, and I'm just like, okay, that's just not Bruce Wayne.
no.
Like, look at
not
the Keaton
all.
Bruce Wayne. He couldn't care less about how rich he is. I love the table scene.
Couldn't agree more. Oh,
Right?
that's
Or-
such a great scene. I
don't think
actually
I've
love that
ever
scene.
been in here before.
That's so
Right.
perfect.
Could you pass the salt?
It is. That's such a good scene. I always remember that scene too, for some reason. Like,
Yeah.
it always sticks out.
I just love it. He's like, you want to get out of here? And then they go and they eat with Alfred because that's what he really does every time.
Yeah, it's so good.
That was the first and last time I gave him a riding lesson.
All right, Sawyer, who won the movie for you?
Batman. I know it's simple, but I mean, just for me, you were talking earlier about how much like your favorite thing about the movie is that the appreciation for Batman, like just for this movie and how influential it was. I mean, my entire existence was ruled by this movie, the shadow of this movie. Yep. I mean, it came out 4 years before I was born. I was born in '93, and for the I mean, my fourth and fifth birthdays were Batman themed parties.
Yeah, like, I think so was mine, actually. I'm pretty sure my fourth birthday cake was Batman.
Batman on the cake, literally. Yep. I mean, my favorite two toys were Batman and Joker fighting each other in a castle. These movies were just, like, they're the reason why I love Batman. This movie was so influential. Batman was put on the map. I mean, he was already on the map, but now he will forever stay. Because of this movie, Batman movies will be made like Godzilla movies. Like, you will have a Batman movie twice a decade at least. Yep. For the rest of the time, probably.
Yep, absolutely. No, that's a great answer. I had two answers. From a movie standpoint, I said Bruce Wayne because he saves the day. Gotham accepts him for being their own vigilante. And I love the reveal of the bat signal at the end. That's so cool. And he gets the girl, which if you see the next one, he doesn't get the girl or she goes away because we have to reset. But for the movie, he wins because of those reasons. I also said comic book fans because basically, as we talked about earlier, this really launched the entire comic book world, fanverse that we have now. They weren't blockbusters before this, other than Superman, and Superman didn't push it. But those Batmans, I mean, it was the highest grossing film until Batman Returns. And then once Batman Forever came out, then it was like, wait, we can make money on this. And then after that, the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, and then we keep rolling and rolling. And it was really this movie where they figured out, wait, we can make so much money on toys, but it hit without having to be over the top.
It's not pandering.
Yeah, exactly. Like they weren't trying. And you kind of feel that with some of the newer Marvel movies. And I haven't necessarily seen a lot of them, but from what I understand, a lot of them like Miss Marvel or something like that.
Yeah. There's a lack of authenticity.
That's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah. Perfect way of saying that.
And there's a little bit, they feel a little formulaic. It doesn't feel like they're trying new things.
There's that exactly.
When the Marvel Cinematic Universe started, it went Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Thor, so a movie about a god, then Captain America, which was a period piece about superheroes.
Yeah, very interesting.
It all takes place in 1945, except for the very like the stinger at the end, like
Yep.
So they were taking chances, and then now they're the establishment, and it feels like they're not taking those creative chances anymore.
Correct, exactly. And this Batman movie, I have no sense of feeling with any of that. Right?
Oh no,
this feels so unique.
Yeah, authentic. Burton was taking his shot, man. He looked at Batman. He went, "This is what I'm going to do with Batman," and he did exactly what he wanted to do with Batman.
Yep. So I just think that this one just stands out for that. I mean, it's so, again, unique. It's so good, and it's Tim Burton at its finest.
Yeah.
And Daniel's favorite Tim Burton movie, spoiler warning for Beetlejuice.
Oh, no. Oh, is that the podium that you guys did?
We did. Yeah, we did Tim Burton. That. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? All right. Next category. There's a couple of good ones here. Favorite line from the movie. All right, so what was your favorite line?
So I had a hard time with this one because there are a lot. And I do, there's a couple of them that obviously are like going to be said. I didn't know how many people were going to be here. So I was like, oh no, if a few more of the crew are on here, they're definitely going to take some of these. Yeah, so I'll try not to do, like, there's the obvious one. What do you think the most famous line is?
Yeah, good question. I think it's, have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?
You ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?
That's a good one. That's a good one. I would say,
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
Oh, I didn't even think of,
which was ad-libbed.
No way.
That was not supposed to be something said.
Yeah, he was supposed to say, I'm vengeance.
Correct. And Keeman's like, why don't I just say I'm Batman?
That's
and they're
incredible.
like, "Whoa!" It's like, duh.
It is funny how
Looking back.
understated that delivery is in the movie when you look at how it's been kind of mythologized at this point, where there was some new guy that just became Batman for the new animated series, and there was like some press circuit. Yeah. Oh, no. There was some press circuit. Yeah, I've heard it's really good.
It's really good.
There was like a press circuit interview, and they were like, "You got to say it right. You got to say,
yeah,
I'm Batman." And you're like, "Oh, he said it." But when you hear him originally say it, just like I've noticed in general, like with my podcast, going back and watching a lot of these classic movies, you know the lines before you know the movie, and then you actually hear it, and you're like, "Oh, like
that's not what I pictured."
Right, The Godfather.
100%.
I finally watched it this last Christmas, like for the first time, and so I'm expecting, he gave me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
And like they say it like 5 times, and it's very just like quick. They just like, hey, give me an offer I couldn't refuse.
It's not a big deal. It's
like,
not till later that we made it into a big deal. Yeah,
that's really interesting though. That I didn't know that he ad-libbed that. That's incredible because he created an entirely new like meme. I mean, like, meme in the base sense, not. In
No, you're absolutely right.
It's like a Batman staple because
it is.
Bale did it too.
I'm Batman.
Yep.
Right. Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, so the most famous line in my head would be "You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts."
Then he had a...
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a big one. But there's a couple that I've heard, and I didn't even realize it was this movie. I hear them just bandied about. And one of my favorites was, "This town needs an enema."
Yeah, I had that one
was
too.
on my list.
This town needs an enema.
That was on my list. I love that line. Daniel, what do you got?
Never rub another man's rhubarb.
Yeah.
I had that one down too.
That's
that
one
one's wild.
That's one in our lexicon. Like that's one that we always use.
Say it.
Never rub another man's rhubarb.
I had one more that was like it was just the most like Joker, like it was probably the most like classic, like I'm thinking like Mark Hamill Joker line that he had, which was a little song, a little dance, a little Batman's head on a lance.
Oh, little song, little dance, Batman's head on a lance.
It's just so like that was very campy Joker kind of comic book vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next category. Is this a podium role for any of the top billed cast members? So the first one's an interesting one. The top billed is obviously Jack Nicholson.
Right.
Does this for either of you?
No.
We're unanimous here. I said
really?
No.
I was wondering what you guys are going to put.
I said
no.
no.
It is one of his best.
It is, and he was not up for any Academy Awards. He actually was up for Best Actor at the Golden Globes for a comedy or musical.
Whoa, that is crazy.
Isn't that crazy? Because they're weird, and but they split it up in the drama / comedy musical. Well, Batman apparently didn't make the drama cut.
That's weird. Well, I mean, the bear is apparently a comedy.
Figuring out a way to nominate him is all
exactly 100%.
They were just
agreed.
like, we loved your performance. You're not
exactly
like we have these guys in the drama category, so we'll just put you in comedy.
Right?
Yeah, agreed.
And overflow.
And I think this is an extremely important role for Nicholson because I think it resurrects his career.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like A Few Good Men. As good as it gets. Some of those movies don't get made without this.
Yeah.
But I think that Heath Ledger kind of dethroned him as the Joker to the point where I don't think of Jack Nicholson as the Joker, which takes it off the podium.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because I think it's close. I think it's very outside looking in.
Yeah.
But I think if you don't have Heath Ledger, we might think of it differently. Especially for younger kids. If you ask a younger kid, they're going to think of Heath Ledger. They're going to picture that version of Joker. And so that is kind of the reason I'm leaning towards no. So I said Chinatown, The Shining, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because those are his defining roles.
Yeah.
This was very damn close.
Yeah.
But I just think that Heath Ledger kind of changed the game for him, and at least from that standpoint.
Well, and my thing is, he's not even the best Joker with this theme song. Because I personally think Mark Hamill's Joker of the animated series.
Oh, Love.
He's my
Mark Hamill's Joker.
He's who
Mark
I think
Hamill's
about.
Joker.
When I'm reading comic books,
I
I
agree.
hear him delivering the lines. You know, it's Mark Hamill's Joker.
It's that high pitched. It's that high pitched voice. It's that the way he does it. Yeah, I think of the same
going
thing.
up and down.
Couldn't
He likes to
agree
do
more.
that where he starts up and then he goes down at the end of the phrase.
And then he
Oh
finishes
yeah,
way
that's so
down.
good.
Yeah, what was it? The animated
Hamill's
one.
Joker, just for me, is the end all be all Joker for me.
Yeah, I had the
agree.
exact same. Pretty much, I just moved it around a little bit. Chinatown, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and The Shining, with Outside Looking In being The Departed and Batman.
Yeah,
The Departed was a big role at the time.
It is, and he's so good in it. And
Yeah.
the movie's great. It won Best Picture,
Right.
and he's just ridiculous in it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just don't think. I mean, I just think the other ones that he were more defining, and that's why I went with those. So yeah, that's funny that you had the same list.
The same top three, just ordered a little differently.
Yeah, definitely. All right, next we got Michael Keaton. I said yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, 2 for 2.
What's his
I
top
think
three, though?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So I think having Beetlejuice and Batman back to back is clearly his peak. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. So those are the obvious two.
Right.
If I had to go with a third, I say it was Birdman. Because it was
hey, what's he gonna say?
kind of what put him back on the map.
Yes, I agree.
Am I right? I mean, that's what I thought. Yeah,
Batman,
Birdman,
Beetlejuice,
because
Birdman,
it put
that's
him
what I
back on the map. Now, I really like, we talked about this in our Beetlejuice, Daniel. I really like him in Spider-Man.
Yeah, he's
Vulture.
great. He's a
good
great
in
Vulture.
Spider-Man.
He's
He was
honestly
good
Michael
in-
Keaton.
In Spotlight.
Spotlight is really good
He
for
was
him.
good
The
in The
Founder.
Yeah, The Founder. That was the other one that we talked about that I really like, was Ray Kroc.
I've always called Michael Keaton my movie dad, and I've seen like probably
Mr.
about
Mom Dad.
Yes, that movie's also great. It's John Hughes.
Yeah.
And I've seen probably about 75% of his movies, and you'd be surprised, even the ones that are like kind of small and you would forget about, he's so good in them. Like he really puts his all into every movie he's in. Now some of them don't obviously peak, and he's had tons of moments in his career, long stretches where he's been in kind of like off movies.
Yep.
But a lot of those are actually worth watching, even just to watch him act. Like and
Sure.
even like Multiplicity, like a silly movie like
remember that one,
it's
yeah.
still fun.
Yep.
It's still a good movie, and his acting is really good in it. So I definitely would say like go back through his filmography if you like him, and you'll see a lot of movies that are surprisingly good. But
That's
these are
interesting 'cause-
definitely his top three.
Yeah, definitely. All right, and then the only other person I have, and sorry, Billy D. I just don't know if Star Wars is the obvious answer there.
I literally don't even have a top three. It's just Star Wars and this.
Yeah, same. Well, that's exactly why I left him off. But the other one I wanted to talk about was Kim Basinger, and we talk about her in our 8 Mile podcast. I said yes.
Oh, she's the mom in 8 Mile.
She's
right?
the mom. That's right.
Oh my god! You know what movie I always remember her from? I don't know if you guys watched. You remember Cellular?
No, but it was I don't. But it was on her IMDb, like what she's known for, and I was like, I don't think I've heard of that.
It's a low-key classic for me. Now, it was one of those movies that I would catch on like Spike TV at like 10 in the morning. But
Sure.
it was like it was one of those where I watched and I couldn't stop watching. Early
Yeah.
Chris Evans movie. It's Chris
Oh,
Evans is
wow.
the main and he's the main character, and it's like kind of a tech thriller. It's a thriller.
Sure.
But it's a kind of like a cat and mouse thriller. Kim Basinger is being kept away in an attic, and she basically there's a busted phone in the attic, and she puts it together and calls this random number, and it's Chris Evans, and he's like this beach bro on like Long Beach, and he's like trying to find her, find her location, and it's actually and Bill Macy, he's in it too. It's a good movie, and I had that on as the outside looking in, just because she didn't really have much other than obviously LA Confidential and The Natural.
Yep. Yeah, those are the ones that we had, or I had as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she won Best Supporting Actress in LA Confidential.
That's pretty. I didn't know she won. That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, that movie rules. I haven't seen it in a long time, but
Yeah.
I remember really, really liking that movie.
It's on my list. Still gotta watch it.
You gotta go see it.
I know. I love Guy Pearce.
Guess.
Big Guy Pearce fan. So
yeah, he's awesome in that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, last category. Does this movie podium in the year 1989? All right, so I got to talk about 1989 before we get into it. It is stacked.
You think it's stacked? You know, it's so funny. I was looking through and I'm like, I was having a hard time. But let's see why you think it was stacked. Let's see.
The summer lineup was pretty nuts. From April to August, you had Major League, Say Anything, Pet Sematary, Field of Dreams. Then it went back, and the box office then blew up with Roadhouse. You had Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade, Dead Poets Society, Star Trek: The Final Frontier, Ghostbusters 2, which broke the opening day box office the week before Batman. Batman, the next week after Ghostbusters 2 comes out, breaks the record by a mile.
Wait till they get a load of me.
Oh, and that same weekend as Batman, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah, I was wrong. It's a very stacked lineup. What's our podiums?
Yeah, all right, you go first.
Okay, so number 1's Batman.
What are you? I'm Batman.
Number 2 is Back to the Future 2. Now, that was hard, actually. I mean, because Batman Returns is so much more important to me than Batman the original. I almost put Back to the Future 2 because that was a classic. I watched that way more than the first one. I really liked going to the future and going back to the past. There's that scene, and it's classic now. It's been redone and stuff where he takes you on the blackboard and he does the alternate timelines and he shows where you branched off. And I just remember being like,
somewhere in the past, the timeline skewed into this tangent, creating an alternate 1985.
So Back to the Future 2 is big for me. And then my third one, Uncle Buck. A classic growing up. One of my favorite movies. Yes. That's to me my favorite John Candy movie personally. Just because it was one of those VHSs that we had and I just wore it out. You know, I just watched it all the time.
I'm Anita Horgarth.
Buck melanoma. Molly Russell's wart.
All right, Daniel, what's your list?
Mine actually went with the worldwide gross. Legitimately, the order of 3, 2, 1. Number 3 is Back to the Future Part 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Biff Tannen Museum.
Number 2 is Batman.
Vicky Vale.
Bruce Wayne.
And what do you do for a living?
And number 1 is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
No ticket.
I'm an indie dude, and Last Crusade is my favorite of the 3. It might not be the best. I think Raiders is still the best, but my favorite is Last Crusade.
I did not have Batman in my top 3. My number 3 is Little Mermaid.
Up where they stay all day in the sun, wandering free. Wish I could be.
My number 2 is Last Crusade.
Junior? Don't call me that, please.
And my number 1, I did mention it, maybe on my all-time podium, Major League.
This guy here is dead.
Cross him off then.
Yeah. I mean, again, for me, this is a tough year. Now, I guess if you're not a Little Mermaid or Major League fan, maybe I'm a sucker for both.
But that's, that's not my team, obviously.
Oh, I know.
Right.
So, no, great year. But, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Oh, hey, real fast. I did have, I know we didn't do A-B repeat, but I did have one. And you guys had to. You had to have seen this. You know the scene where Kim Basinger or Vicky Vale stays over the first night, and then in the middle of the night,
he's hanging.
He's hanging.
Yeah. That's so good.
And forth and it's squeaking, and I'm like,
and she doesn't ask him questions.
It's so quiet. It's just like you just watch him.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And then it's the next scene.
That's a good AV repeat.
Yes.
I appreciate that because that is exactly what we're going for with that category.
But yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. This is great. I loved that we just like I just felt like I was one of the guys. That was like kind of what I was looking for because this is just so fun. I've been listening to you guys for a while, so it's kind of fun to be able to get on here. This is easily my favorite podcast guest experience so far.
Oh, no, that's awesome. Thanks. Good to hear. Thanks for tuning into our show. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify. Also, we need to send you one of these guys. Koozies, shirts. Go to moviepodium.net for any fun stuff. And thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Hi, everybody.